All right, you're listening to On Deck, presented by Amazing Met Zone. I'm your boy Phil from Shirley with my boys Drew Minotti 82 and Vintage Mets.
What up? What up?
Vintage, we got vintage here. We're going to talk a little best top five WCW, WWF, wherever managers in wrestling. I'm starting it off. My number five, it's got to be Paul Bearer. I just feel like he made the Undertaker what he was. He was just always in character. The whole thing with Kane and him even managing Mankind too. Paul Bearer has to be on my list. To me, he was just amazing. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was just scared shitless of this fucking guy. So he's got to be on my list. Number five, Paul Bearer.
Nice. Yeah, he definitely a top five manager for sure. My number five is Jim Cornette. I know, like, he's just one of those guys you hate, but at the same time, you just like he does his job. And I've been watching a lot of Dark Side of the Ring, and he's all over the place. Like, he's like one of the he's like a historian of wrestling. Um, I looked up who he managed. I remember him managing Yokozuna, but Owen Hart, Bulldog, Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Al Snow. And I saw today's episode. It wasn't today's episode, but I saw an episode that with Sherry Martel, and I didn't realize they made their debuts together. Like, he managed her,
Oh, wow.
they managed her, and I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, Jim Cornette, legend, one of the best. He's my number five for sure.
My number five is the beautiful Miss Elizabeth.
Nice.
Miss Elizabeth was before there was Sable or any of these heartthrob women wrestlers, it was Miss Elizabeth. She paved the way for beautiful women to get into wrestling. She managed one of the most prolific wrestlers of all time in Macho Man. She basically got married on national television. I managed her getting married. There's so much story behind Miss Elizabeth. We're not going to get into it, but shout out to Miss Elizabeth. You're my number five manager of all time.
Love it. Love it. My number four is a legend going back for a long time, Mr. Fuji. I mean, when he first came out, when I was younger, when I first seen him, to me, I never even thought the guy could speak English. He was always in character and he killed it. Him with Yokozuna, him with Demolition, always getting involved in the matches, throwing garlic powder in people's faces. To me, Mr. Fuji, Master Fuji, he's got to be on my list, number four.
Nice. Yeah. He's, like you said, he was a small little dude, carried such a big presence.
Yep.
And people were scared the shit out of him. But my number four is piggyback on Phil's. It's gonna be Paul Bearer. I mean, he didn't really manage too many guys, but the Taker and that whole storyline with him having an affair with Taker's mom and having Kane and Taker killing his parents and all that. I mean, the Dudley Boys kidnapping Paul Bearer and all the casket matches. Like you said, he didn't really need to be a manager of too many guys. He just needed Taker, and he was it. That was his character. And he was just. I remember when Taker first came out, just seeing Paul Bearer and just being scared. Man, I'm like, this guy is creepy as fuck. But yeah, Paul Bearer was amazing. One of the best managers. He's my number four.
For my number four manager of all time, I am agreeing with Phil on this as Mr. Fuji. Number four, a wrestler himself, managed world champions, and also I'm all inclusive in my top five. Like, there weren't many managers of Asian descent. So shout out to all the Asian Mets fans.
Love it.
Number four, Mr.
Love
Fuji.
it. Love it. My number three, piggybacking off of what Drew was saying before with his number five, it's Jim Cornette. I mean, I feel like he's one of the best on the mic. His mic skills is legit up there with everybody, with guys like The Rock, Stone Cold. I always remember him managing like lower level guys too, even though he did Yokozuna, like you said, Owen Hart, British Bulldog. He was managing guys like the Midnight Express in the mid-90s, coming out with Jeff Jarrett sometimes. And It just seemed like he was just so good on the mic getting heat. To me, he's got to be on my list. Number 3, corny. And like you said, him doing the dark side of the rings, you just give the man a mic and just let him go. He's amazing. Jim Cornette, my number 3.
Yeah, my top 3 was hard, man. Like I switched these guys around a lot. Like I feel like when I do my top 5s, my top 3s are always difficult. Like I kind of this guy could be my number 1, like easily. But my number 3 is gonna be Paul Heyman. Like I know I kind of like he's newer, so that's kind of like why. I mean, not really newer, but still, he's like a the newest manager on my list, most recent manager on my list. But I mean, his list of superstars that he's managed is insane. I mean, Brock, RVD, Taz, CM Punk, um, Bam Bam, Kurt Angle. Like, I mean, he's just like all over the place. ECW, WWF. Like, I mean, the guy is like talented beyond belief, And like I said, at one point he was my number 1, but I kind of switched him to number 3. Paul Heyman, my number 3 top manager of all time.
Great choice. My man, top 3, number 3 manager of all time is none other than Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer, who, I mean, he made you believe that there was the Undertaker's parents' ashes inside of this urn. His voice, oh yes, the Undertaker. You just like, oh, the believability that he was really a Paul Bearer. His name is Paul Bearer. Come on, Paul Bearer, manager of really the Undertaker. I love that guy. Paul Bearer, you're number 3 on my list.
Love it. Love it. My number 2, kind of copying, obviously, Drew. Drew's getting it right before me. To me, it's Paul Heyman. I think eventually when this is all said and done, he will be number 1. I think you look at like what's going on right now. He's by far the best. The whole storyline with the bloodline recently, taking that fall through the table, like just staying up all night, like seeing him in character, the way he looked, just killing it. Like I said, when it's all said and done, years from now, he will be number 1, but he's not there yet in my eyes. He's my number 2, Paul Heyman.
Yeah, man. On the mic, forget about it. Like that guy, you could tell like he knows what he's doing, right? And like I said, so many superstars, so many, and like longevity from ECW days, like the grassroots of ECW. Paul Heyman is just unreal. He's like again, he's like Jim Cornette. He's like one of those guys you just want to punch in the face, but he's doing his job, man. He's a villain, kind of. What he did with Roman Reigns is insane, My number 2, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, right? He could have easily, again, been my number 1. His days with Hogan, that's like what I remember as a manager, right? Like seeing him with Hogan, seeing him with Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Ted DiBiase. I mean, the list goes on and on. The guy he was so talented. Watching interviews with him, again, another guy who was like just a student of the game. He knew so much about wrestling. He knew exactly what to do. Jimmy Hart, Mouth of the South, my number 2, easily.
Great choice, and I gotta agree with you. My number 2 is the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. He's the megaphone. I love a good prop.
Yeah.
I love a good prop. The megaphone. First of all, he was one of the best dressed managers of all time, too. Like, don't get it twisted. He would match Hulk Hogan. He would come out with colorful outfits. The Mouth of the South. You could hear his voice right now. That's my number 2, Jim Hart.
The crazy thing with him too was like he'd match Hulk Hogan. He'd match like one of the early guys too. He must have been changing his outfit like 6 times in a night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My number 1, I'm gonna keep it
short. We're all
gonna
agree on number 1.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna keep it short because I think we all know there's one guy who is the GOAT. And it's Bobby the Brain Heenan. It's pretty simple for me. I don't think there's anybody that is on his level yet. I think Paul Heyman can get there, but that's about it. To me, it was just he was way ahead of his time. You just give that man a mic and step aside. You don't have to say nothing. You know what I mean? And he'll just carry you. My number 1, the GOAT, Bobby the Brain.
Yep, same. Bobby's my number one, right? His list of guys too: Mr. Perfect, Flair, Andre the Giant, Paul Orndorff, Big John Studd, right? King Kong Bundy. Like these guys were huge. They didn't really even need him, but at the same time, like you said, on the mic, this guy he just came alive, right? And they didn't call him the Brain for nothing. The guy was so smart. Like he was ahead of his time. Yeah, I can't have anyone else at my number one right now except Bobby the Brain Heenan.
This really sucks that I have to go last because it sounds like I'm just repeating everything that y'all saying. But I have to agree with you guys. Bobby the Brain Heenan, the GOAT. He made me really like dislike wrestlers. The way he would present them, what he would say, in interviews, just the list goes on of wrestlers that he's managed. Drew mentioned them a bunch. Come on, you managed Andre the Giant, you managed Ric Flair, like, come on. Yeah, man. Bobby the Brain Heenan is really
Love it.
you
Love
can't
it.
really and it sucks that Paul Heyman didn't make my list because he's put in a lot of work. I just like these five. He would make my top six.
Yep.
And
Yep.
like you said, he can potentially be number one
Yep.
soon. I don't want to make this all drawn out. I just don't like Roman Reigns. So Roman Reigns, see this, me and you, 1-on-1, Chase in City Field parking lot.
Thank you to Vintage joining us. Thanks everybody for listening. We want to hear your top five in the comments. Let us know what you agree with, disagree with, but hey, we all agree the GOAT is Bobby the Brain Heenan. Thanks for listening.
Having me on, guys.
Let's go Mets.
Let's go,
Let's
Mets.
go.